The story opens by introducing a game that once captivated countless players, a romance action RPG praised for its carefully built world and tightly designed systems. Its mechanics were smooth, its setting rich with lore, and critics lauded it as a masterpiece that set a high bar for the genre. The tale unfolds in the kingdom of Solstia, within the prestigious royal academy where gifted youths train to become the realm's future pillars. Knights, mages, and nobles in training filled its halls, each bound to fate by talent and ambition. At the heart of the game's narrative stood a familiar promise, a classic struggle against a looming demon king, a battle meant to decide the world's salvation. Yet despite all its polish and acclaim, the game carried a flaw that many players could never ignore. The biggest complaint about the game became clear at the very end: the final boss was deeply disappointing. After the Demon King was defeated, the story suddenly revealed Duke Lucille von Central as the true mastermind, only for him to appear briefly and be defeated almost immediately. Later, a fan book explained that Lucille's backstory had been cut due to time constraints, stripping away his depth and importance. What should have been a powerful climax instead left players frustrated, feeling that the story's ending failed to live up to everything that came before it. Reincarnated into the world of Ultima Fantasia, the protagonist quickly realizes he possesses exceptional talent in this body. As the truth sinks in, confidence replaces surprise. With a quiet smile, he forms a plan, one that could change the fate of the world and fix the ending that once left him unsatisfied. The protagonist recalls his past life as an overworked corporate employee who died from exhaustion, only to be reborn inside Ultima Fantasia. Instead of becoming the hero or the final boss, he realizes he has reincarnated as Klaus Renford, a said-to-be mastermind and subordinate of Lucille who was destined to fade away without leaving a mark. Though frustrated at first, a sudden realization dawns on him, changing how he views his position in the story. Back in his new life, Klaus quietly sits in his study, lost in thought as his butler and tutor, Oliver, notices his distraction. When asked if something is wrong, Klaus brushes it off and asks to be left alone. As Oliver respectfully withdraws, Klaus reflects on his situation. He had believed he was reincarnated as a villain destined only to wait for his execution, but that assumption is beginning to feel wrong. Klaus reflects that he can vaguely remember the original Klaus's memories. Though Klaus wasn't especially talented in magic or swordsmanship, he possessed powerful abilities hidden within him. Realizing this, Klaus grows eager to test those powers for himself. When Klaus first tries wielding a sword, his movements are clumsy and awkward, far worse than he expected. However, as he continues practicing while recalling the form of a skilled swordsman, his body begins to adapt. With each swing, his technique sharpens, and clear improvement quickly becomes visible. Klaus then experiments with magic by combining his natural affinity with the techniques he remembers from the game. To his shock, he successfully casts a massive fireball on his very first attempt. When he tries other spells, the results are the same. Every spell is far more powerful than anything the original Klaus had ever managed. After testing his abilities, Klaus pauses in front of a mirror and notices another unexpected bonus: his appearance. The refined features and noble look suit him perfectly. With a faintly amused thought, he wonders if, had Klaus appeared more often in the game, he might have been far more popular than anyone realized. Realizing how powerful he can become by combining Klaus's hidden talent with his knowledge of the game, Klaus makes a firm decision. He will draw out that strength to its fullest and change his fate. This time, he refuses to live and die the same meaningless life he did before. With his resolve solidified, Klaus looks ahead to the story's inevitable end and makes a bold choice. If the only flaw of Ultima Fantasia was its weak final boss, then he will fix it himself. Rather than dying as a forgettable villain, he decides to surpass Lucille, become the true final boss, and create an ending worthy of the world, one that no one will ever call disappointing again. Klaus fully commits to his new path, raising his fist with fierce determination. He vows to walk the road of becoming the final boss step by step, embracing evil deeds and shaping himself into a charismatic villain. No matter what it takes, he swears he will stop at nothing until he reaches that ultimate goal. Klaus pauses to think about his first move and reflects on his circumstances. 6 months earlier, his parents were killed by a monster attack, leaving him to become the head of the Renford family at just 15. The family's reputation was already poor, the arrogant nobles who living in luxury while looking down on commoners. And Klaus himself had grown up selfish under corrupt aristocratic parents. Klaus admits he can't bring himself to sympathize with his past self. Even with a tragic backstory, Klaus's selfish personality makes him feel more like a disposable mob villain. Still, he realizes the Renford family's infamy could be useful to him. As he considers his next move, his thoughts are interrupted by a knock. Oliver arrives to inform him that it's time for his meal. Deciding to indulge for now, Klaus sets his scheming aside and heads to eat. Klaus is presented with an extravagant meal tailored to his noble tastes. Rather than eating it, he pauses to examine it, appreciating the indulgence before deciding what to do next. He inspects it with interest, clearly intrigued by the luxury, and learns that the dish is red dragon liver. The words sink in, red dragon liver. His expression shifts as soon as Klaus catches the word liver. He recoils in horror, admitting he hates liver and can't stand its strong odor. In his previous life as an overworked office worker who has forced himself to eat things he despised, suddenly a realization dawns, and his thoughts abruptly change direction. Klaus abruptly pushes the dish away and declares he'll pass. Using the moment to play his role, he straightens up and lets cold arrogance seep into his voice, scolding the servants for daring to present such a pitiful meal before him. The chef panics, insisting Klaus himself had asked for this meal, and he have worked hard to gather its rare ingredients. Klaus freezes for a moment, caught off guard, then brushes it off with feigned indifference. Internally, he realizes the confusion comes from having mixed memories, his own and the original Klaus's, making it hard to recall exactly what he said. Klaus coldly orders his butler to imprison the chef and everyone involved in acquiring the meal, insisting he never gave such an order. The command shocks everyone, but before it can be carried out, Oliver steps in, warning that such an action would brand Klaus as a tyrant. Faced with that reminder, the situation hangs in tense uncertainty. Oliver, clearly unsettled, tries to reason with him, insisting the chef meant no harm, but Klaus makes it clear that intent doesn't matter when his dignity is at stake. Klaus doubles down on his act, declaring that anyone who defies him deserves harsh punishment as a matter of course. He coldly insists his order be followed, framing it as authority rather than cruelty. Oliver reluctantly accepts the order and withdraws. As he walks away, Klaus feels a strange thrill rise in his chest. The satisfaction of exerting absolute authority is enough to make him forget his hunger entirely. With a faint, pleased smile, he reflects that his performance was flawless, undeniably villainous, just as he intended. As Klaus leaves, Oliver lingers behind, deeply troubled. He notes that Klaus has shown harsh behavior before, but this time feels far worse, far more unreasonable than anything he expected. Nearby, the chef collapses in despair, overwhelmed by the punishment after finally managing to secure such rare red dragon ingredients. As Klaus's outburst settles, a new doubt quietly surfaces. Red dragon liver is an ingredient whose value depends entirely on its freshness, yet there's been no news of a red dragon being slain anywhere nearby. The thought lingers as his gaze drifts back to the untouched dish. If no dragon was killed, then where did this liver really come from? Thinking back on Klaus's words, Oliver feels a chill. It suggests that someone might actually intend to harm his young lord. The thought unsettles him deeply. Unable to shake his concern, Oliver hesitates, then quietly apologizes and reaches for the untouched dish himself. As he inspects the red dragon liver more closely, doubt sharpens in his eyes. Surely, something about this isn't right. A week passes, and Klaus proudly counts the days, convinced his one evil deed-a-day plan is progressing smoothly. When Oliver requests an audience, Klaus allows it without hesitation. Oliver then gets straight to the point, bringing up the unresolved matter of the red dragon liver incident. Klaus recalls that he had them jailed for exactly 1 week. Klaus, wearing a smug smile, is already thinking ahead, planning to release the punished man so rumors of his cruelty will spread and boost his villain points. But Oliver calmly questions Klaus, asking if he truly understood everything that happened from the very beginning. Klaus freezes, wondering what he means. But Oliver interrupts, steering the conversation back to the truth. He clarifies that the liver was never red dragon liver at all. The ingredient served that day was something far cheaper and more disturbing in origin. It was a hungry bird liver. Oliver explains what truly happened. The liver Klaus saw that day was never red dragon liver, it was identified as hungry bird liver, a far cheaper ingredient. Someone had used illusion magic to disguise its appearance and pass it off as something rare. The chef had been deceived just as much as anyone else, unknowingly buying and serving a fake. Hearing this, Oliver expresses his amazement that Klaus sensed something was wrong instantly, even without knowing the trick behind it. Klaus explodes in disbelief. Internally, he knew nothing about any deception. Oliver calmly explains that the merchant who supplied the ingredients has already been arrested, and that the man himself confessed. He admitted he assumed Klaus wouldn't notice the difference between good and bad ingredients, which is why he dared to use illusions in the first place. Klaus then blurting out internally, "Then I need to give him the death penalty or something, right?" Oliver explains his reasoning plainly. Taking Klaus's words, "To those who defy me I'll be sure to show what exactly will happen to those who dare at face value." He interpreted them in his own way, confiscated the merchant's assets and sentenced him to work for the Renford family without pay for a time. To Klaus, that was a fitting punishment for someone who dared deceive him. Oliver, however, is quietly horrified. For a merchant, losing everything and being forced into unpaid labor is worse than death itself. Meanwhile, Klaus can only think, in stunned disbelief, why his butler keeps making such extreme decisions without consulting him first. And lastly, Oliver casually adds that he has something else to give Klaus. Klaus reads the letter in disbelief. The chefs he had imprisoned are thanking him, grateful that he only sentenced them to a week in jail, even though presenting a substandard dish to the family head would normally mean execution. Staring at the page, Klaus can't help but think, stunned, that the very people he punished are now expressing gratitude toward him. Rumors begin to spread throughout the manor and the town. Servants whisper in admiration, praising Klaus for instantly seeing through illusions and for showing mercy instead of executing the chefs. Outside the estate, word travels even faster. People talk about how the young head of the Renford family personally uncovered the fraud and dealt with the culprit. Support for Klaus quietly grows, both among the staff and the common folk. Watching this unfold, Oliver feels a deep sense of relief and pride, sincerely telling Klaus that he is grateful to be serving such a capable and respected master. After reporting the situation and delivering the message, Oliver quietly leaves the room. Klaus was so focused on acting like a ruthless final boss that he didn't realize what was actually happening around him. The butler made decisions on his own because he genuinely believed he was acting in Klaus's best interest, based on Klaus's words and behavior. The butler interpreted Klaus's vague, threatening statements seriously and carried them out responsibly, even more carefully than Klaus intended. Because of this, the punishments were fair and restrained, not cruel. The people involved felt grateful instead of resentful. Rumors spread that Klaus is smart, kind, and just, not evil. Klaus completely breaks down because he finally understands what went wrong. He wanted to become a charismatic villain, someone feared and respected. But instead, because of how he acted and how others interpreted his words, he ended up behaving like a kind, fair, and competent ruler. His punishments were reasonable, people felt protected rather than oppressed, and rumors spread praising him instead of fearing him. Klaus thought he was moving toward becoming a final boss, but in reality, he unknowingly stepped onto the path of becoming a good ruler instead. It's been 2 weeks since his reincarnation, and instead of becoming feared, his reputation has improved, which frustrates him. He realizes that the more he tries to act like a villain, the more people end up supporting him. To him, that feels like terrible luck. So he decides he needs to actively change course. Rather than relying on misunderstandings or secondhand actions, he plans to go out himself and inspect the Renford territory directly. His thinking is simple. If he wants to stop being seen as a benevolent ruler and move closer to becoming a true villain, he needs to take direct action and understand the situation firsthand. He disguises himself with a cloak and carries a sword, feeling that it finally gives him a proper fantasy villain look. As he walks through the town in Renford territory, he observes things calmly instead of acting right away. From what he sees, the town has all the basic necessities, so people aren't struggling to survive. It's quieter and less flashy than the royal capital, with no entertainment districts. Thanks to 2 weeks of paperwork and reports, Klaus already understands the territory on paper. He's also been doing sword and magic training, so he's more confident going out alone. As he walks through the town, he notices that the streets are quiet and orderly. People aren't panicking or suffering. The town isn't very lively, but it's stable. To Klaus, this feels like good news, not because things are good, but because he assumes the quietness means people are resentful, tense, or oppressed under his rule. He thinks this lack of liveliness proves his domain is already leaning toward the Dark Lord atmosphere he wants. He tells himself, "This must be the current state of my domain. If even the capital is like this, other regions must be worse. Surely there are people who hate me." At first, Klaus is telling himself that a charismatic villain should be hated. He assumes Oliver, his butler, must have exaggerated when he said Klaus's popularity had skyrocketed. Klaus convinces himself that the lack of obvious hostility means he just hasn't seen it yet. Suddenly Klaus encountering a real problem in the streets. A small boy stealing, and immediately after, the merchant grabs the child and starts roughly take his things back. The boy, however, desperately begs for forgiveness and explains that he stole only because his younger sisters have nothing to eat. He isn't stealing for greed, he's stealing to survive. The merchant is angry and cruel, calling the fruit something only the Lord could enjoy and insulting the boy for even touching it. To him, the child is just a thief who deserves punishment. He doesn't care about the reason. Around them, bystanders notice what's happening. Some feel uncomfortable and tell the merchant to go easier on the child. Others mention that kids like him from the slums have been appearing more often. People quietly question why the guards aren't doing anything. People are divided, some hate thieves, others feel sympathy for the starving child. Most of them aren't truly angry at the boy, but are venting their frustration at someone weaker because life is hard. Klaus watches the situation calmly. Then Klaus steps in. The crowd is shocked to see their lord personally present. His appearance alone changes the mood. The people watching start to wonder what Klaus is planning, and some even think he might personally help the child.
Klaus steps in and silently confronts the rich merchant who was abusing the starving boy.
He doesn't shout or threaten, his calm presence alone makes the merchant panic and back off. Klaus suddenly raises his hand. The boy, realizing that the person standing before him is the Lord himself, reaches out weakly and calls to him. When the child reaches out to him, expecting kindness, Klaus immediately shuts him down. He tells the boy that someone like him is unnecessary in his domain. Then he uses his power. The child is confused. He genuinely thought Klaus would help him.
Klaus fully commits to acting like a villain.
He casts a spell called Wind Prison, trapping the boy inside a swirling cage of air and lifting him off the ground.
The child panics and screams, completely terrified.
People around them are shocked and horrified. Some shout that it's going too far to use magic on a kid.
From the crowd's perspective, this looks like a genuine cruelty. Klaus finally explains his thinking.
He reminds himself that he doesn't want to be a saint or a hero, his goal is to become a charismatic villain. From his perspective, protecting a poor child would only improve his image, which is the opposite of what he wants. So he deliberately shifts his protection to the merchant instead. He reasons that the merchant is the one who provides him with luxury goods like high-class fruit, making him more useful in a cold, villain-like sense. By siding with the rich merchant and ignoring the starving child, Klaus believes he can lower his reputation and appear selfish and cruel. Klaus decides to act publicly and decisively so he doesn't miss his chance to look like a villain.
He steps forward in front of the crowd and asks, "Does anyone have any complaints?" Instead of quietly handling things, he wants people to feel intimidated and think, "This lord is dangerous." This is him deliberately asserting authority and pressure.
Klaus publicly declares that he will not tolerate this kind of behavior in his domain, speaking in a cold, authoritative way so everyone hears it. On the surface, it sounds like a strict ruler laying down the law. In his own head, though, he's thrilled. He thinks he did everything perfectly. He harshly punished a child and made it a public spectacle. Then he used that punishment to threaten the rest of his subjects. To Klaus, this feels like textbook villain behavior, so he believes he just gained a huge amount of evil charisma points. The guards arrive late and are clearly confused about what's going on.
Klaus notices them and internally thinks their timing is convenient.
He then explains that he has already captured the criminal using his wind magic, trapping them in a temporary wind prison that will naturally disperse in about 5 minutes. After saying that, he delegates everything else to the guards and walks away. When the guards question the situation, Klaus brushes them off calmly and confidently, telling them to ask the crowd later if they don't understand. After everything is over, Klaus thinks the child will be completely exhausted from being violently tossed around by the wind spell. But he reassures himself that it's fine because his wind prison isn't a lethal spell, and killing a child would obviously be unacceptable.
In Klaus's mind, the child suffering publicly will damage his reputation even more. That means his plan to become a feared, disliked ruler is working perfectly. So he walks away laughing to himself, genuinely excited about what tomorrow will bring. The guards and townspeople arrive after Klaus has already left. They don't know the full context, so they rely on rumors and what they see.
Someone explains that a child thief was punished by the Lord using magic.
Seeing the aftermath and hearing only fragments, they conclude the punishment was far too severe for the crime.
One guard recalls hearing rumors that Klaus had recently become generous, but now decides, I guess those rumors were lies. Then another guard notices the wind spell stopping.
Once the wind spell fades, people rush over and shout, "Are you okay?" But they saw something unexpected.
They are expecting the child but a grown man emerge. Everyone was confused. One guard suddenly realizes something and thinks, wait,
this guy, could he be?
Then start to recognize the person caught in the spell.
Then the shocked realization hits.
This man is a key member of the criminal organization Crimson, known as Gallo of the White Shadow. The guard recalls important information. I thought he'd vanished several months ago.
And why is he here? The guard calmly remembers what Lord already did.
He tells us that the criminal is sealed inside the wind prison and orders us to take care of the rest once the spell fades. And recently Lord also saw through the disguise fake rare item, the red dragon liver. And now, this wasn't random cruelty or overreaction, it was a deliberate capture of a dangerous criminal. A few days after the incident, Klaus is calmly thinking about what happened. He hears that a criminal organization, Crimson, was wiped out.
The townspeople and servants feel relieved, happy that crime has dropped and daily life is now safer.
He casually thinks that an organization like that could have been useful under his control, since he wants to become a charismatic villain, not a benevolent ruler. Speaking of crime, he's thinking back to the incident from the other day. He wonders what the final outcome was after that mess.
The people Klaus helped are now openly thanking him.
The former victims, including the children and townsfolk, are smiling, relieved, and genuinely grateful.
From their point of view, crime is gone, they're safe again, and their lord protected them. Klaus, however, is caught completely off guard. He didn't expect gratitude. He thought his actions would make people fear or dislike him. A guard reports back proudly, Crimson has been completely destroyed. He praises Klaus's instructions from the other day, treating them as a brilliant strategy. Klaus reacts with confusion. His expression and inner thought, "What are they talking about?" show that he didn't realize his actions would lead to something this big. The guard then explains the key detail. The boy Klaus captured was actually a high-ranking executive of Crimson, whose appearance had been altered using an illusion magic tool. Klaus suddenly feels déjà vu, realizing this situation is similar to past misunderstandings where people assumed he planned everything. The guards explain what actually happened behind the scenes. The criminal group was testing an illusion magic tool. They disguised themselves as children to gain sympathy. They split up and committed thefts, causing the recent crime wave. But, capturing the disguised boy exposed the scheme. From that executive, the guards learned who sold the illusion tool, and where the rest of the group was hiding. Because of this they stopped the thefts, and prevented a much larger criminal plan in advance. A girl explains that she was actually present at the scene, when Lord told those words, which were directed at an executive of the criminal group Crimson. The girl is quoting what Klaus said earlier, repeating his harsh, ruler-like words, "A being like you is unnecessary in my domain and I will never allow this kind of conduct." Because of that, she became deeply inspired, seeing Klaus as a noble, righteous lord who protects the people. But Klaus himself being confused, thinking, who is that? The crowd suddenly rushes toward Klaus, all shouting "My lord," at once. People are pushing in close, clearly excited and emotional after everything they've heard about what he did. Klaus, meanwhile, is completely overwhelmed. He panics internally, cursing under his breath, because this is the exact opposite of what he wanted. Instead of being feared as a villain, he's being idolized and swarmed by grateful citizens. The townspeople are still excited and cheering for Klaus, closing in on him with gratitude. Klaus completely panics. Inside his head, he screams in frustration, wondering why everything keeps turning out like this when he wanted the opposite. Few days later, Klaus sighs and complains, wondering why he has to do everything himself, even though he's supposed to be working toward becoming a charismatic villain. Klaus is being told that the room ahead can only be opened by someone with the blood of the Renford family. That's why he has to personally go retrieve the items. The butler also reminds him that the work has piled up. Because recently, Klaus was overwhelmed by how much support and praise he suddenly received, so he ended up sick in bed for 3 days, and now all the work from those days has accumulated. While Klaus was sick in bed, Oliver handled all of Klaus's duties in his place, keeping the domain running. Klaus also notes that, after the real Klaus's parents died, and he reincarnated here, it was Oliver who continued to manage things smoothly. Klaus admits to himself that he can't oppose Oliver right now, because he's far too competent and indispensable. But, he dramatically declares in his mind that, one day he'll show Oliver how overwhelmingly evil he is. Suddenly a scream was heard, and it catches Klaus's attention. Then Klaus goes to that direction, wondering if something happened. A maid holding her cleaning tool tightly. She looks alarmed. When the maid finally notices Klaus behind her, she freezes in shock and blurts out, "My lord?" The maid bows deeply, shaking, and apologizes loudly. I am so sorry." She's clearly panicking because she thinks she's caused trouble in front of her lord. Klaus glances at her reaction, slightly puzzled, noticing how frightened she looks. Klaus notices the overturned bucket and spilled water. He calmly assumes the situation is simple and thinks, did she spill some water while cleaning? From his perspective, it's a minor accident. He thinks her fear is because she believes he's about to punish her, not because of the spill itself. Internally, he celebrates, believing this fear raises his villain approval rating. Klaus notices that the maid is cowering far more than necessary for just spilling water. Her fear feels excessive. That triggers a realization for him, that reminds me. And he starts thinking about why she might be so frightened. He focuses on one detail, the maid has black hair. In the Solstia kingdom, there's a long-standing superstition that people with black hair have demon blood. Because of that belief, black-haired people are often targets of discrimination, even though everyone knows the rumor isn't true. Klaus understands that this prejudice is likely the real reason she's so terrified, not because she spilled water, and not because he's about to punish her, but because she's used to being treated harshly. Klaus is reminded of a heroine from the game story he knows. She also had black hair and suffered discrimination because of it. Her struggle against prejudice moved him deeply. While he's thinking about that, the maid looks up at him, confused and unsure why he suddenly went quiet. In his head, Klaus abruptly raises his hand, declaring in exaggerated fashion that as a charismatic villain, he should punish her. But he immediately cuts himself off,
admitting that this has nothing to do with him and that he doesn't actually have time for such theatrics. Instead of punishing her, he calmly tells the maid to go back to work, prioritizing his official duties. The maid is left stunned, responding with a small ha, clearly not expecting that outcome. The maid finally responds, still shaken, stammering why yes, my lord. She's clearly relieved. Oliver, the butler, calls him back to reality and urges him to move on, and Klaus agrees. Klaus watches her go and starts thinking to himself. He finds it strange that he doesn't remember ever seeing her before, especially since her black hair is so noticeable. Oliver, the butler, explains her background. The maid's name is Marie. She is a fully trained maid who has served the Renford family since the previous lord's time. Klaus is still bothered and asks Oliver why he has never seen that maid before. He replies, however, she is usually assigned very little work. Most of her duties are limited to minor cleaning and miscellaneous chores. Because of that, she rarely enters the central areas of the manor, where Klaus usually is. Oliver concludes that this is why Klaus never had a chance to meet her before. When Klaus hears that Marie is given very little work, the words hit him harder than expected. For a moment, he misunderstands and wonders if that means she's a slacker. Oliver immediately corrects him, saying that's not what he meant at all. This situation reminds him of someone from his past life, a hateful coworker. That coworker would dump his own work on Klaus, act friendly in front of the boss, and still get praised and promoted, while Klaus carried the burden. Remembering that unfairness leaves Klaus irritated and uneasy, Klaus is still caught up in his thoughts. He considers that if Marie were like the coworker from his past life, someone who caused trouble for others, then he would need to punish her properly. Oliver, meanwhile, is explaining more details, but Klaus isn't really listening at that moment. Oliver mentions that Marie usually lives by herself in the annex, separate from the other servants. That line finally catches Klaus's attention. He snaps out of his thoughts and realizes what Oliver just said. Immediately, Klaus gives a sudden order. He tells Oliver to bring him the floor plans of the manor. Oliver, slightly confused but obedient as always, answers, as you wish. Klaus confirms that Marie is the only servant living in the detached building. He finds that strange, because his parents were strict and would never tolerate a lazy servant, let alone let one live alone. From this, Klaus jumps to the wrong conclusion. He assumes Marie must have been given special treatment by his parents. In his imagination, he mistakenly concludes she was spoiled by his parents, when in reality, the truth is very different. Klaus firmly rejects the idea of special treatment or living alone being seen as kindness. He reasons that if Marie's previous masters looked good for treating her well, then doing the same would hurt his image as a charismatic villain. To him, that would look like a smear against his villain persona, so he immediately shuts the idea down. Because of that logic, he decides Marie should not receive special consideration. He orders Oliver to inform Marie and tells him to have her take only the bare essentials from the annex and wait outside. Oliver answers Klaus's order politely with as you wish. Klaus, meanwhile, is confused by his own reaction and thinks to himself that he got worked up way too suddenly. Despite saying he doesn't care anymore, Klaus decides he'll go to the annex himself anyway. Klaus arrives at the detached building and is immediately shocked by how it looks. Ironically, Klaus even thinks it's still more luxurious than the cramped office life he had in his past world. Klaus, still stuck in his earlier misunderstanding, thinks she must have been a favorite to be given a place like this. Marie arrives carrying her small bag and nervously says she brought only her essentials, just as ordered. Marie looks confused and asks what he's planning to do. Klaus answers bluntly, saying it should be obvious. Klaus tells the others to watch closely, signaling that he's about to do something important. With a dramatic gesture, he declares, "This is my answer." Klaus raises his hand and unleashes a powerful spell, Storm of Destruction. A massive spiraling shockwave erupts from his hand, tearing through the area in front of him. Marie is completely shocked by what just happened. She can't believe Klaus destroyed the annex. She asks why he would suddenly do something like that. Klaus calmly says it's exactly as it looks and explains his decision. The scene shows the annex reduced to rubble. Klaus states plainly, "Now you won't be living in this annex anymore." Marie thinks she's lost whatever protection or favor she had and fears punishment. Marie lowers her head, clearly confused and uneasy after the annex is destroyed. Klaus observes that she seems shocked because her special treatment is gone. Marie nervously asks what will happen to her now. Klaus calmly tells Marie that she will now share a room with the other maids, instead of living alone. Marie listens quietly, looking unsure but obedient. Klaus then adds that she will participate in all mansion work, not just light chores. He firmly states in his mind that he won't tolerate any slacking. Marie hesitates and softly says, "You mean," clearly trying to understand the situation. Klaus turns away and says he said everything he needed to, leaving the rest to Oliver. Klaus notices her reaction and thinks that rumors of him being a cruel noble will surely spread because of this. He doesn't regret it, in fact, he's satisfied, laughing to himself because this outcome fits his image as a charismatic villain. Marie was left alone, holding her luggage while surrounded by the rubble of the destroyed annex. During Marie's childhood, she and her mother lived together, enduring discrimination because they both had black hair. The royal family tried to eliminate prejudice against people with black hair by ordering nobles to actively hire them. When Marie was 12 years old, Viscount Renford hired her mother to gain favor with the royal family. As a result, both mother and daughter were brought to the Renford estate and made to live in the rundown annex, separate from the main manor. Marie's mother was born weak and later died during an epidemic, after being overworked more than the other servants. After her mother's death, Marie was kept on as a replacement, because the family didn't want to lose another servant with black hair. However, they didn't truly know what to do with her, so she was given only a few mostly meaningless tasks. Marie herself didn't understand why she was there and lacked the courage to leave. Over time, the annex became a kind of curse, binding her emotionally. Marie remembers her mother's last request, to someday leave the annex and see the wider world. Young Marie clings to her mother, saying she's lonely and feels bound to this place, wanting to go with her. Her mother gently refuses, apologizing that she can't take Marie along, but reassures her that things will be okay. She ends with a hopeful promise that someday, Marie will be able to leave. Marie grew up believing no one would come for her. The promise of salvation existed, but reality constantly proved otherwise. Despite that promise, she says she couldn't believe those words. Even after the new lord, Klaus, took over the manor, he never noticed her existence at all. Marie apologizes in panic when Klaus appears. She's shocked and asks herself why he's here, because a lord normally wouldn't come to a place like this. Marie then explains why she dared to hope. She had heard rumors that the new lord is kind and compassionate, so she thought maybe, just maybe, he would be different. Marie explains the rumors she heard about Klaus. People said he destroyed a crime syndicate, captured an evil merchant, and even showed mercy to a subordinate who made a mistake. These stories made him sound powerful but kind. Marie looks at Klaus quietly, her expression serious and hopeful. In her heart, she asks him directly, "My lord, will you be the one to save me?" Klaus firmly declares his decision. He says Marie will no longer live alone, will share a room with the other maids, and will take part in the mansion's work like everyone else. Then he emphasizes it strongly. Watch closely. This is my answer. Marie closes her eyes and clasps her hands, thinking of her mother. In her heart, she realizes that what Klaus is doing now fulfills the promise her mother once made, that someday, she would be freed from the annex and live a proper life. Oliver gently responds that he's glad she was finally able to leave the annex, showing sincere relief for her situation. Marie wipes away tears and thanks Oliver. She tells him he has always been kind to her, her voice calm but emotional. Now understanding the outcome, Marie smiles with gratitude. She realizes she can finally live like everyone else, no longer isolated, and sincerely thanks them for it. Marie recalls how, just a short while ago, Oliver had told her Klaus's order to bring only the bare essentials and wait. At the time, she didn't know what it would lead to. He explains that Klaus told him to make sure Marie didn't forget the mementos left by her mother. Oliver then gently tells Marie that she shouldn't be thanking him. He's calm and humble, making it clear he was only following instructions. Marie quietly takes in as Oliver reminds her, from now on, Klaus is her master. Marie smiles warmly and bows slightly, sincerely thanking Klaus. In her heart, she accepts him completely as her master. She believes Klaus is both a great lord, and the best master she could ever serve. She feels grateful and devoted, after everything he has done for her. Klaus suddenly feels a strange chill run through him. He looks confused and uneasy, wondering if he's still not fully recovered or if something is wrong with him physically. His expression steadies, and he reassures himself that, overall, things turned out well this time. Immediately after, his usual mindset returns. He starts thinking strategically again, asking himself what kind of incident he should cause next to lower his likability, since his goal is still to act like a proper villain.